After generations of relentless toil, humanity finally forged true magic, not something anyone consciously chased, but an inevitable leap. Someone dared bind that power to blood, turning it into inheritance, and they launched a relentless hunt to pass it on to the future. When magic began flaring up in people, the creators seared it into family bloodlines, turning inheritance into an iron vault that preserved their achievements. Ustia pulses with arcane power, earning its title as the Nation of Magic. The nobility channels fierce magic to repel invaders and crush monsters, shielding the people, and for that service they secure exalted status and sweeping privileges. Among the country's magical nobility, the House of Marquis Frenbridge blazes brightest, and the family's baby, Hermes, already stands as the heir to the title. Even as a child, raw magic surged through him, so powerful everyone hailed him a prodigy. Once the Frenbridge family wielded the title of Duke, no heir mastered magic, their lands and prestige bled away, and they dropped to the rank of Marquis, branded a dying line. They pinned every hope on Hermes. They hailed it as a miracle, certain it would resurrect the family's greatness. 4 years later, Hermes sprints to his father's side, breathless and bursting to tell him that. He stunned everyone in his magic lessons. The teacher proclaimed him the most promising student his age, and his proud father swore he'd become the greatest mage the family had ever seen. Everyone around Hermes heaps praise on him and pins sky-high expectations to his shoulders. His father dreams he'll rival the legendary kings of old and their great ancestors. His peers admire him, and his teachers lean in, eager to see how deep his hereditary magic runs. Hermes soaks it all up, chin high, determination blazing. Chris, Hermes' brother, endures his father's relentless comparisons and cutting belittlement for failing to wield the same magical power. They crown Hermes the shining example and scorn Chris as pathetic. Hereditary magic, lineage magic, courses through blood, a blazing power handed down from ancestor to descendant. Cranking the screws on Chris, Hermes, eyes alight, barrels into an excited conversation with Katia, his childhood friend and heir to another duchy. Hermes insisted lineage magic belongs only to the nobility and utterly outclasses ordinary spells, while Katja shrugged and darted off to play instead of listening, and Hermes just kept rattling on about magic with bright-eyed excitement. Hermes declares his dream to rise as a powerful, heroic mage like the legends he idolizes, and Katia sees the magic blazing in him and rushes to encourage him, convinced he'll make it. Laser-focused on that goal, Hermes pushed himself and grew stronger every day until his 7th birthday. During Hermes' magical evaluation, the examiner's voice snapped. He couldn't sense even a trace of lineage magic in him. The promised manifestation never erupts. Gasps ripple through the crowd as the revelation slams in. Hermes reels, forced to face the brutal truth. He doesn't have the power everyone expected. The kingdom's evaluator slams down the verdict. Hermes has no magic, zero aptitude. Disbelief slammed into his father as he reeled. He couldn't accept that the family's heir had failed. Around him, voices cried that Hermes wasn't favored by God, saying the amount of magic one inherits depends on the purity of the blood, a cruel decree of fate, not a verdict on a person's worth. Hermes' father, burning with frustration, plunged into black despair when he realized every scheme to recover the Duke title through his son had crumbled to dust. Rage exploded through him. He snarled Hermes is useless and pounced with savage force, blind to the boy's shock and suffering. After he assaulted Hermes, his father locked him up and tore into him, spitting worthless scum and demanding he be thrown out into the streets. He spits that he can't even breathe the same air as his son. Hermes freezes, shock ripping into desperate shouts that crash against cold silence. Desperation seized Ernie as he begged to keep trying, vowing to work harder and do whatever it takes to become the mage his father dreamed of. His father sneered, cruelly rejected him, and branded him a defective product. Without lineage magic, his dream of becoming the sun shattered, and Hermes seized that the god of the stars had abandoned him, branding him unworthy. Hermes' father bellowed that he wasn't a gift from God but a demon's spawn, and he'd only set him free if, by some miracle, Hermes could wield lineage magic. Doubt gnaws at him, but he walks out and slams the cell shut. Hermes is left alone, and that single click is the instant his life is ripped apart and reborn. Caged and crushed, Hermes replays the days gone by and trembles at the thought he'll never break free because he can't use his lineage magic. Right when all hope had died, his brother Chris materialized at the cell, calling his name with a secretive grin, and Ernie's breath caught as recognition slammed into him. Chris bursts onto the scene, announcing he came to give magic lessons to his poor little brother, then flashes a grin and reveals he already knows everything. He flings his power into the air with manic joy, crowing that he's God's chosen, then flashes an intense smile and detonates a theatrical, thunderous spell that leaves Hermes gaping. Chris lunges at Hermes with Hermes' own magic, taunting that it might jolt his brother's dormant power awake, a cruel smile twisting his face as he savors the moment. Hermes slams into the wall, pain ripping through him, as Chris glares with icy contempt and sneers, pathetic. Chris snarled that it was pure payback. He was punishing Hermes for brushing him off while basking in their father's favor. Guilt slams into Hermes. He never looked at Chris's side. Swept up in praise and the rush of learning magic, he missed how lonely Chris felt, and now that neglect hits him like a boulder. Chris snarled that he'd seize Hermes' place as heir and become the great mage he'd always dreamed of. Hermes wept in silence, chained and humiliated, while Chris laughed and strode away. Moments later, a girl rushes to the cell and fires. "Are you okay?" Katja bursts into the cell and finds Hermes bloodied and imprisoned, and shock explodes through her as she realizes his father and Chris are responsible. Crushed that her healing magic can't help him, she clasps his hand and whispers an apology. Even with magic, no one should be treated like this. Hermes slumps, calls himself defective, and insists that just being able to eat is enough. Katja cuts him off sharply. She swore she believed in him, declaring his hunger for magic burned hotter than anyone's, and he worked himself to the bone, so someone like him couldn't possibly lack lineage magic. She vowed she'd never give up on him, no matter what. Hawkeye grips Hermes' shoulder, eyes blazing, and vows he'll become a great mage and stand by her again. Charged by her words, Hermes refused to surrender. He remembered he could break free if he unlocked lineage magic. Flashing a renewed grin, he vowed to keep trying and thanked Katja for returning his hope. Katja realizes she's been found out. Before she bolts, she spits that she hates seeing her loved ones locked behind bars. She locks eyes with Hermes and swears he'll get out, an unbreakable vow. His smile blooms with renewed hope, the first spark of the coming change. Tormented in that hellhole, Hermes hurled himself into unearthing his magic every single day. A ferocious will to escape roared inside him, and Katja's unwavering support shoved him into action. Those two things were his lifeblood, fueling his spirit and anchoring him as he pushed forward on his quest. 3 years of relentless grind, and Hermes still hadn't moved an inch. He sees Katja and his excitement surges, then it crashes when she announces she won't be coming back. She offers a sorrowful apology, leaving Hermes dazed and stunned. Katja drops a bombshell. She's being forced to marry Aster, the second prince, hailed as the greatest living wielder of lineage magic and the frontrunner for the throne. She declares that as heir to the duchy, accepting is an honor she can't refuse. Hermes, stunned, blurts, "You're really going to accept?" Katja scrambles to stall the wedding for at least 6 months, but Chris bursts in with guards and shatters any chance of that happening. He proclaims that her engagement to Prince Aster has hurled the Friendbreed family back into high nobility, and Hermes and Katja stagger, stunned by Chris' icy, unyielding conviction. Katja erupts, fury boiling over when she learns the prince refuses to see Hermes. Chris, brimming with arrogant pride, sneers that his talent has made him Prince Aster's right-hand man. He snarled that the whole Friendbreed line kneels to the prince, and that Hermes will stay locked away on the prince's explicit orders. This command is final. Prince Astor sneered that anyone without magical aptitude was useless and barked for Hermes to be eliminated. Chris, eyes dull with obedience, barks for the guards to drag Hermes away. Katja lunges, outrage sparking through her, but she's hauled back and held fast. He's yanked away while Hermes' shout cuts through the chaos, calling Katja, and she vows she'll parley with the prince to save him. Katja's desperate screams for Hermes slice the air as he falls mute, agonizing over how to win his father's love and God's favor, abandoned to suffering, while his heart begs to be seen though he can't fathom why he's met with such contempt. Hermes jolts awake in a filthy, crumbling ruin, surrounded by hollow-eyed people ravaged by misery. Confused, he scrambles to figure out where he is as every suspicious gaze from the crowd rakes him, amplifying his fear and deepening his loneliness. A pack of men with crooked, suspicious smiles closes in on Hermes and snaps, "Are you alone?" The instant he realizes the danger, panic rips through him and he scrambles to flee, terror swallowing him whole. Desperation seizes him as Katja's face flashes in his mind, and he prays for someone, anyone, to save him while terror of utter helplessness floods his bones. Hermes bolts for the exit, but burly men clamp onto him and yank him back. They mock him for walking alone as a noble. One growls that he'll be staying with them now while another clamps onto him, and Hermes thrashes, begging to be let go as he's pinned from every side and hopelessly outnumbered. The aggressors huddle, debating Hermes' fate, sell him or drag him into slavery, then scoff that he's too weak and worthless, not even worth a ransom. Blinded by hatred for the nobility, they descended on him and hammered him mercilessly, shouting that killing him was the only answer while Hermes lay on the floor, wounded and helpless, forced to face the raw horror of human cruelty. Hermes, battered and desperate, wonders if all his pain and sacrifice were for nothing as a knife-wielding attacker with a cruel grin stalks closer, and he feels his life could end there despite everything he'd poured into earning recognition. He thinks, I don't want it to end like this. Just as a knife lunged for Hermes, a jagged lightning bolt tore from the sky and smashed into his attackers, stopping them cold. A powerful woman strides into the background, her steps like thunder and snaps, stop. Wounded and sprawled on the ground, Hermes snaps her eyes open in stunned disbelief as the thugs recoil, panic carving their faces. She sneers at the scene and snaps, I came home in a great mood, and now there's a group of adults beating a child. It's disgusting. You've ruined my day. While Hermes watches her, surprised and confused by her imposing presence. Her gaze knife-sharp and brimming with confidence, she taunts, I'll relish beating those cowards. The thugs erupted, faces contorted in blazing fury and stunned disbelief. They screamed for her to move and ignited their magic circles. She plants her feet and faces them head-on, unafraid. With a single crushing motion, she obliterates every aggressor, flinging them far away while she stands calm and elegant at the center of the destruction. Hermes reels, frozen with shock, as she smirks and sneers. That was terrifying, every word laced with sarcasm. Hermes' jaw drops as the woman tears the air with blazing fire, jagged ice, and whistling wind all at once. He can't fathom how she's wielding 3 lineage magics when people are supposed to have only one. The spell obliterates everything around them, and he realizes that, even though it's ordinary magic, her power is absurd. Shock pinned Hermes to the spot as the crowd around him fell silent, eyes wide at the woman's raw, overwhelming strength. With a presence that silences the air and magic so absurd it shatters reality, she's dubbed the walking catastrophe, Rose, the feared witch of the skies. Rage flaring, Rose sneered at the men for taking so long to realize who she truly was, scolded them for calling anyone who uses ordinary magic weak, then coiled her power and vowed to gift them a demonstration of her true might. Rose chants a titanic spell and summons a giant magic circle behind her. In a solemn, iron voice, she vows to unleash magic befitting her rank, wielding a power that rips through the boundary between heaven and earth as energy crackles and her enemies stare, frozen in fear. Rose slams her will into her potent lineage magic, Exiled, and a blinding light detonates, drowning the whole area in searing radiance. Her magic slammed into the attackers head-on, freezing them mid-step so they couldn't move, the raw power a clear gulf that marked her as an elite mage. Rose scans the fallen thugs, flatly says she didn't kill them, only neutralized them, and sneers they're not worth dirtying her hands, then strides to Hermes and tells him he's safe now, and the boy, stunned and relieved, stares up at the woman who rescued him with effortless, terrifying power. Hermes screamed to warn Rose, behind you, a long-range magical shot is coming. She whips around, locks onto the threat, and with one lethal motion, obliterates the building that fired on them. Coldly she says there really was a shooter, and admits the enemies were more prepared than she'd imagined. Rose explodes with praise, eyes blazing as she tells Hermes he spotted the magic from so far away. She gushed that he's incredible, and then bragged she's never seen anyone more talented than herself. Hermes reels, words ripped from his throat as Rose steps forward, names herself and says he's grabbed her attention. His name, Hermes von Frenbreed, laid bare, the boy who hit rock bottom at 7, now seizing a single chance to turn his life around. Rose strides forward, declares herself the witch, locks eyes with Hermes and plucks his buried potential into the light, one meeting that rips the boy's life onto a brand new path. Hermes blurted a grateful thank you for saving him. Rose exhaled in relief. Her hits had only come from anger, and then her gaze snapped to something strange. They sneered at Hermes as frail, then he locked onto a long-range attack and ripped the mask off his hidden talent. Tears welled in Hermes' eyes as his father's every word slammed into him. He rushes into an explanation that he wanted to be a mage like Rose, then crumples, choking out that he has no power. Rose jolts back, thinking he's hurt, but quickly sees this wound runs deeper. Hermes erupts, shouting that it's useless. No matter how hard he fights, he'll never be recognized. Rose senses the pain gnawing at him, steps forward calmly and says she can hear his story. He spits out that his family abandoned him and his only friend was ripped away, and Rose stays silent, feeling every jagged corner of his loneliness settle on her. Rose clung to Hermes in a crushing hug and breathed, I know how much it hurts. She tears into the arrogant nobles who act superior while leeching off others' power, then fixes them with a grave stare and declares nothing in this world ever changes, and finally reassures Hermes that it doesn't matter he lacks lineage magic, and he shouldn't believe what others say. Hermes swallows and confirms he has no lineage magic, and Rose reels, her jaw dropping in stunned disbelief. She erupts with delight, raving about his magic manipulation and detection, calling him incredible, a raw diamond she swears she won't let go to waste. Rose swoons over Hermes, declaring him impossibly adorable and blurting she wants to take him home, while Hermes goes beet red, baffled and squirming under the compliments. Rose's chest tightens, she's gone too far. She forces a steady breath, reins herself in, then steadies her voice and calls his name with cold, serious calm. Rose pins Hermes with a fierce stare and snaps, "Do you really like magic?" He snaps a firm yes, then admits that without hereditary magic he can never become the kind of mage he always dreamed of, yet he beams sincerely and vows he loves magic. Rose yanked Hermes close and snapped it was time to set the record straight. Lineage magic is brutal bloodline power, you can't grind your way to it. While they slice through the clouds, Rose snaps that lineage magic is just a handed talent, no guarantee of true strength, and rips into anyone who rests on simply having it, saying too many never train for real power. Hermes listens, stunned. Rose explains magic isn't a divine miracle, but a construct born of human logic. Lineage magic roars with power, yet she insists anyone who throws themselves into it can forge their own magic, and Hermes feels his world flip inside out at the revelation. As they streak beneath the moonlight, Rose confesses that being born with lineage magic, chained to a single type, can be almost like a curse. Rose drops the truth. Hermes has no lineage magic. He wasn't cursed, he was unleashed, free to forge any magic he can dream, blessed with endless possibilities. Rose snaps that Hermes is the freest mage in the world, capable of forging magics that eclipse even hers. She declares she's been searching for someone like him, and that admission sparks Hermes to start believing in himself. Beneath a blazing full moon, Rose thrusts out her hand and, eyes locked on Hermes, growls, "Do you want to be my disciple?" A single answer that catapults the boy into a brand new life. Hermes admitted that, when he thought it through, Rose's proposal smelled off, but hearing her speak about magic with raw, blazing passion made him believe she loved it as fiercely as he did. Rose's words slammed into Hermes. Nothing convinced him like the raw certainty that she truly believed in his potential. He accepts the invitation, eyes blazing, and declares he's fired up to work with her. 5 years after Hermes and Rose met, older and hardened, he bolts through the city streets with fierce, unshakable determination. From that day on, she hurled herself into her studies and noble duties with ferocious, unrelenting focus. Guilt seared her heart. She hammered herself with relentless effort and iron discipline, never letting that day fade. The ruler dismisses every plea with a haughty sneer, snarling that the country's fate is decided by hereditary magic, and because he alone wields the strongest power, he proclaims himself the law. When a worried citizen presses him about the country's future, he shuts them down, snarls to blame their weak magic, and walks off with a cold, contemptuous sneer. Cadia is discovered by a squad of soldiers, spearheaded by a man named Chris. He snaps the formal title, Lady Keisha von Trachea, "Stop resisting," and hurls the command at her. Keisha's eyes flash with surprise at his arrival, but she steels her face and holds her ground. Chris hurls a charge that Keisha's conspiring against the state, and she snaps back, "There's no proof. He's abusing his power to try and lock up a duke's daughter without a single formal accusation," so she demands answers and refuses to be shoved aside. Chris admits, voice cracking, he has no formal accusation to pin on Cadia. He boasts he's acting on second Prince Aster's orders, insists the prince's verdict is law, even when it comes to declaring her guilty, and Keisha rips his bluff wide open. Keisha knows that stepping into a cell now would be her shouting to the world, "I'm guilty." Even though she suspects Chris is bluffing, she knows in the gilded world of nobility a whispered lie, once spread as rumor, will morph into fact 5 brutal years hammered into her that appearances beat the truth. Keisha refuses to give in and channels a crackling surge of magic to confront Chris. He sneers, taunting that it's what criminals always do, try to flee. He snarls he'll unleash her father's power to lock her away, but she steels herself and barks for him to fall back. Cadia snapped, ripping Chris apart with a furious tirade over his rudeness and his father's overbearing arrogance. Determination burning, she cries out that even amid the wreckage she prays for peace. Magic surges through her as she vows to save a world she can't even see, with dawn still far from breaking. Keisha ignites her lineage magic, Soteria Trivia, as a roaring vortex of raw arcane energy whips around her. The enemy freezes, jaw-dropping. She's born with lineage magic too, and the revelation knocks the wind out of him. The enemy lashes back, unleashing his lineage magic, Misteltina. They unleashed a cataclysmic energy shockwave that ripped through the field, detonating with brutal force and leveling everything in its wake. The enemy's assault crashes down harder than Rose expected. She lunges to strike back, but her magic sputters and won't flow. Still not at her best, she forces herself onward, eyes blazing with determination to face this threat no matter the risk. The enemy sneers as Rose's strike barely scratches him, then channels his final, devastating spell, bragging he has the king's permission to unleash destruction as he arrogantly declares it's time for her to sleep, while Rose lies on the ground, weakened but still conscious. Gasping on the ground, weakened and spent, Rose's mind snaps to that single memory, Hermes as a child, eyes honest and bright, sincerely praising her magic, something no one else had ever done. His words became a steady refuge, pulling her back from the edge time after time. Guilt claws at her for failing to shield him back then. Memories of their childhood, growing up targeted and scorned, ignite a fierce fire inside her. Rose dismisses clinging to the past as foolish, nothing can be changed, but when defeat crashes over her, she aches for only one thing. Hermes, the boy who once gripped her hand, eyes alight with the belief he could save her. Hermes materializes at the last moment and slams a roaring magical barrier around Rose, blasting the incoming attack back as his eyes burn with the quiet, iron resolve of someone who's been waiting to repay everything she did for him. Hermes materializes beside Rose, senses the taut tension, a calm smile tugging at his lips as he admits he doesn't fully understand what's happening but can tell she's in trouble. Rose whipped around at his voice and froze. The missing face stood before her. Hermes, sharper and steadier with time, bowed and said Kari-sama, declaring his return after years away. The moment she sees him, surprise crashes through Keisha and leaves her shaken as childhood memories surge. Sunlit afternoons under the tree, their shy smiles and the steady support he'd always given, and overwhelmed, she whispers his name, voice trembling. Hermes strode up to Katia, confidence crackling, and declared, I kept my promise, I'm an incredible mage now, and I've come back to you. A stone-calm, iron-steady gaze proclaims, he has finally fulfilled the promise he swore as a child. He storms back into the royal capital that once expelled him, and barely through the gates he collides with the people who haunt his past, Katia and his brother. He locks eyes with them, calm as stone, and intones, it's been a long time since we last met. Flashback erupts to the moment she first met her master, hostile memories thunder in her head, commands to kill and seething contempt closing in, and that meeting upended her entire life. The boy snapped awake, confusion clouding his mind, and flung the curtains open as panic surged through him. He swept his gaze across the unfamiliar room, hunting for any clue where he was. The elegant surroundings stunned him, and he sank onto the bed, still not recognizing the place. Hermes' breath stops, he freezes, jaw slack, as the woman lying beside him smiles peacefully and murmurs, Good morning. Last night's memory crashes into him, leaving him flushed with mortifying embarrassment and reeling in stunned confusion. Hermes scrambles through a fog of memories, desperate to piece together why he woke up in the same bed as the woman. She explains exhaustion slammed into him and he passed out en route, so she carried him home, and refusing to jolt him awake, let him sleep at her side. He remembers he's now her apprentice. Mortified, Hermes' cheeks flash red as he blurts a breathless thank you and a hurried apology the moment he realizes she changed his clothes and cleaned his body. Her smile soothed him as she insisted she was the one who should be thanking him. She confessed she craved human warmth and was thrilled he'd slept at her side, basking in the closeness. She teases Hermes with a choice, rest longer or keep sleeping beside her. He blushes and declines, still shy, so she offers to show him the house before breakfast, holds out her hand, and after a heartbeat's hesitation, Hermes takes it. They burst from the room together, taking the first daring step into life under one roof. She steers him through the house, announcing Hermes can roam freely, everywhere but the laboratory, and snaps, don't act recklessly until you get your bearings. Hermes froze, every sense razor sharp, like he'd slipped into a dream. The place breathed calm and welcome, utterly unlike the brutal reality he'd known. Doubt claws at Hermes. Does he deserve any of this? As the woman declares he'll be living there and must claim a room of his own. He falters, surprised and hesitant, while she beams, cheerfully insisting she lives alone and has plenty of space. Then she hands him a room and tells him to use it freely. Hermes gapes as he steps into a room that looks like a forgotten storage unit. The woman, baffled, admits she hasn't organized it in about 10 years. Ernie bows his head and accepts, voice soft and grateful just to have a space, while she flushes and quickly pivots the moment with a nervous, breakfast. Hermes sniffs the scorched air, eyes the burnt plate, and demands what's going on. The woman snaps that she hasn't cooked in 10 years and survives on ready-made food, and Hermes forces a polite smile and says it's fine. A steaming plate felt like pure luxury, next to the meager scraps he used to choke down. Hermes scoffs inwardly, sure her household skills fall short despite her effort. Facing the strange food, he forces a grateful smile, then earnestly asks to be taught magic. Surprise sparks across her face. She beams, agrees on the spot, and whisks him into a room stacked with books where his learning will begin. Hermes' jaw drops as he drinks in the cavern of spellbooks, and she hurriedly apologizes, convinced she hasn't earned his trust yet. She confesses she poured herself into caring for him and cooking to wipe away that impression, and now she feels she's failed at everything. Surprise slammed into Hermes when it finally hit him she'd truly been trying for him. He admits his guard snapped up the moment a stranger hauled him toward an unknown place, a natural suspicion. She exhales, relieved his caution stayed sharp. She clasps his hands, sincerity blazing in her voice, and declares he's a miracle, too precious not to be cherished. She swears she'll never betray Hermes, if he's truly sincere about his desire to learn magic, and if he stumbles, she won't let him fall. Her words hit him like a lifeline. He confesses he's been terrified, and when she promises to guide him for as long as he wants to move forward, he finally begins to open up. Hermes is haunted by the day his magic was exposed, and his life exploded into a nightmare. People screamed abomination and cast him out, and that wound left him terrified of being abandoned again. Tears pinned behind his eyes, he chokes out an apology for doubting her, thanks her with raw sincerity, admits he would have died without her. Now hope and magic surge back through him. Hermes beamed with raw sincerity and begged her to watch over him from now on, calling her master with fierce pride. She felt her heart swell at his words. Tears welling, she pulls him into a fierce, bone-crushing hug and cries he's the best disciple she could ever have, their soaring joy sealing the official birth of their master-apprentice bond. While Hermes studies, his master drops a bomb. Every spell, every drill, every sleepless hour of practice funnels into one final, decisive objective. She vowed to hammer Hermes into mastering the most powerful magic she'd ever forged, her crowning masterpiece, and she swore only he could command it completely. Even if it takes ages, the master plants himself before a massive magical circle and bellows that brutal days lie ahead. Hermes' grueling training with him kicks off, time blurs into a sprint, and a new phase of their lives explodes into being. Hermes gripped his master's hand, voice like steel, and vowed he'd return to the royal capital. He swears to honor every lesson, wrest back what the past stole, and charge forward with no regrets. His master watches in silence, moved by that iron determination. Hermes declares he'll scour the capital's arcane schools, test every kind of magic until his own ignites, then flashes a determined grin and lays out his true goal. When she realizes Hermes is truly leaving, his master collapses into desperate sobs, pleading that she can't bear the thought of being apart. She clings to him, confessing she can't cook, clean, or manage a single thing on her own and that she can't live without him, while Hermes watches with a faint smile, already picturing the chaos she'll face the moment he's gone. Hermes, suddenly grown and sharp with resolve, pushes away his master's hugs and says, "I'm 15, it's time I move on," and she answers with a trembling nod, eyes aching as she accepts that her disciple must leave. She smiles, affection burning in her eyes, saying everything she taught him was just a seed she planted. Now it's his to choose which magic he'll make bloom across the world. The master leans in, voice ice cold. The royal capital is a savage place, packed with lazy, ill-intentioned people who swallow whatever they're fed without thinking, and she warns Hermes he'll witness sights he'll desperately try to unsee. She asks if he still wants to go, but she already knows the answer. Hermes bristles with resolve, declares he's leaving, insists he has no complaints about living with his master, yet the capital calls with an urgent duty, and he must climb higher to stand at her level. He can't stay here forever. Even if it was a lie, he demanded her steady gaze and blind trust. Hermes doubled down on leaving, bragging he could achieve something great, then grinned and joked he'd only return if he was hungry, lonely, or on the brink of death. His master, a confident smile on her face, roars encouragement. Go to the capital, unleash your strength, and make everyone who despised you witness the powerful person you've become. Grinning with fierce resolve, Ernie bolts toward his new destination. Behind him, his master waves wildly across the open field, her heart overflowing with pride as she shouts, "I love you, my disciple." Eyes locked on the sky, the master thundered with raw conviction. Hermes must recover every one of his desires. Hermes blazes back into the capital and collides with a pivotal figure from his past. Now stronger and crackling with hard-won confidence, he believes he can finally repay the favor from that day. Their reunion explodes into the long-overdue beginning of something huge. Locking a fierce, determined gaze, Hermes declares that this time he'll be the one to protect her, swearing to unleash his own magic to save her and igniting his true mission. Hermes bursts back into Katia's life after years away. She freezes, jaw dropping as recognition crashes over her like a thunderbolt. He strides in, calm and unshaken, declaring he stepped in the moment he saw her in danger. He doesn't know the whole story, but he makes it painfully clear he couldn't just look the other way. Hermes strode forward and proclaimed his identity to the gathered group, and their leader, his brother, glared at him with icy disdain. Gasping at the sight of him alive, his brother's mind snapped to Hermes' expulsion from the family 5 years ago, and he couldn't hide the unease stamped across his face. He spits rejected, then barks, "Hand over the girl at your side," his words oozing smug, crushing arrogance. Hermes' brother storms in, fury crackling in his voice, snarling that Hermes has no right to meddle. He's just a commoner with no magical lineage, while Hermes stays ice-cold and asks, "Why are you accusing the girl?" She exploded into defense, voice blazing, "I never tarnished the Duke's honor." His brother snapped, ordering Hermes to stay out, and coldly reminding him he's no longer one of the nobility. Hermes pins Cadia with the memory of the night she soothed him in prison, the only thing that kept his spirit from shattering, and now he's determined to repay her. He fixed them with a razor stare and snapped there were plenty of ways to help her, even taking out the noble causing trouble, and his brother's face burned with visible irritation. Catch's breath catches at Hermes' words as she snaps that it's cruel of him to show up at that exact moment and say things that pull her toward depending on him. Hermes just smiles. While the brother, rage burning in his veins, unleashes a thunderous spell and screams that he's arrogant, fury boils over because Hermes dared suggest getting rid of him. Hermes' brother slams his palm down and unleashes a devastating arcane technique woven from sacred symbols and ancient titles. Recognition slams into Hermes. He knows that spell the moment it appears. He's seen it countless times before. He cracks a confident grin and declares he's thrilled this is the first spell he's witnessed since returning to the capital. Hermes steps forward to reveal his magic. No sooner does he begin the invocation than razor-cut sigils and humming force coil around him, while he intones a spell about truth, creation, and miracle that silences everyone, and Katja watches, breath stolen, knowing he's tapping into something utterly unlike anything they've seen. Hermes snaps that his magic didn't spring from noble blood or divine blessing. It was forged by his master's lessons and the sweat he poured into his training, living proof he rose by his own merit. Hermes unleashes his creation magic, Estelle of the Origin, and a radiant, impossibly intricate structure explodes into being, towering as the hard-won pinnacle of everything he forged with his own hands, without inheritance or divine blessing. Rage and denial choke Hermes' brother as he roars that it's impossible Hermes could possess superior magic, branding his creation third-rate, and Hermes' firm storms in, confronting him with raw impatience. The noble sputters that his only mission was to capture Cadia, but his composure fractures as he beholds the brother he once despised, now towering beyond every expectation. The enemy roared that no one would care about a commoner caught right in the middle of this mess. Hermes, unmoved, hammers his spell into being with iron resolve. Cadia watches, silent and struck by his power, then announces that Estelle of the Origin is a magic forged to dissect and rebuild any other spell, the bedrock of magical creation. Cadia hisses that magic runs on iron rules and can only be reconstructed from its original blueprint. Her blood-bound power pins her under that ceiling, while Hermes answers to no such chain. Devoid of any inherited magic bloodline, he alone holds the theoretical power to recreate any spell from scratch, a feat ordinary mages can't even dream of. While his opponent stares down the impossible, Hermes stayed eerily calm, replaying the impossible he'd just pulled off. Lineage magic, declared uncopyable, had been recreated before everyone's eyes, forged from a lifetime of hoarded knowledge and brutal training since childhood, and unleashed flawlessly in the chaos of actual battle. Rage boiled in Hermes' brother as he howled, refusing to accept he'd been outshone. Hermes, to him, was a relic resurrected from the past that should have stayed buried. Hermes, stone-cold and silent, already coils a spell with surgical precision. He'll answer with raw, crushing power, not words. Hermes unleashes a razor-precise blast of magic. An energy blast slams into Chris head-on, hurling him violently as the surrounding knights scream his name, frozen and powerless as he crashes down. After Chris crashes down, his allies erupt into panic and rush to haul him up, and Hermes and Cadia pounce on the chaos, bracing to bolt. Boiling with rage and humiliation, Chris barked orders for his soldiers to annihilate the armies, his screams shredding the air as a desperate chase tore through the city. Hermes and Cadia tore into a distant alley, safe at last. Hermes gasped for breath and blinked in shock. 5 years had sharpened Cadia into a strikingly grown woman. Cadia, voice raw with grief and fury, explodes into a torrent of questions and accusations, ripping open the truth about how relentlessly he has searched for him all this time. Cadia collapses in front of Hermes, demanding to know why he never trusted her all this time as she pours out the raw ache she'd borne, the terror of losing him, and the bitter regret of not being able to help. Hermes listens silently, every word pressing like a weight on his chest. He locks eyes with a sincere gaze and offers a simple, heartfelt apology. Overwhelmed, Cadia collapses into his arms and bursts into tears. Tears flooding her eyes, Katja thanks Hermes for surviving, forgives him, and lets a relieved smile bloom when she sees him. Hermes, with a loving touch, presses his forehead to hers and apologizes for all he couldn't do, and they stand in a heavy silence, sharing the burden of memories and the fierce relief of reunion. Katja leans in and unleashes a rapid-fire barrage of questions, probing every twist of Hermes' life over the past 5 years. They burn to know where he lives, how he lives, and what he plans to do next. Hermes tries to answer but falters, his reply hazy enough to startle her. He gives a shy smile and admits he only has a few half-formed ideas and hasn't decided anything yet. Katja beams, swings the door wide, and declares Hermes can move in. She's hiring him on the spot. The proposal slammed into Hermes like lightning. He froze, breath knocked out, completely at a loss for how to respond. A subordinate drops to his knees before the prince, begging forgiveness for failing to seize Katja, and the prince's irritation hardens into ice as he coldly scolds that he'd been given ample troops yet still fell to some unknown mage. The prince, shame choking him after his defeat, forges the report to hide that he'd been bested by an exile. He slammed his fist and roared that Katja now threatens the nation, demanding the mage who aided her be investigated and that Katja be stripped of her freedom to roam. The prince's gaze froze on the humiliated subordinate, disdain coiling through him. Anyone who forgot their place must be crushed, like the many who fell before, and with no mercy he cast the man aside as a mere nuisance. After leaving his master's house, the boy thundered back to the capital, found his childhood friend Katja pinned by false accusations, and channeled his lineage magic through the Esteli of the origin to snatch her to safety. Shock slammed into him, but he pushed it down and chose to follow her to the Tarkok's family residence, arriving at the mansion with Katja at his side. He'd been here before, but the place still hit him with jaw-dropping scale. A servant barreled up to her, bursting with relief at her return and fretting that she'd been gone so long. Alarm shot through Layla the moment she saw Katja injured and her clothes filthy. Katja soothes her with a steady whisper. Layla's eyes snap to Hermes. It's the boy who used to play with Katja as a kid, and she scoffs that he's infamous for being expelled for having no talent. Relief explodes from her the instant she sees him, safe and sound. Katja flings open the trochea doors, pulls Hermes into a warm welcome, and vows her servants will respect him, not greet him with the frosty disdain of the Fenriel house. Relief blooms on Hermes' face as they're ushered before Lord Georgian, where Katja steps forward and formally introduces him. Lord Georgian slams a hand on Hermes' shoulder, roars his thanks for keeping Katja safe, then reels back, stunned at how much he's grown. When he learns Katja wants to hire him as a guard, he presses Hermes to unleash his magic again. His daughter was awestruck before. Hermes accepts, steels himself, and prepares to demonstrate. Hermes unleashes his magic and blows Lord Georgian away. The Lord admits he's never seen anything like it, and when probed about its origin, Hermes dodges the truth, saying only that a certain person taught him. Sensing the secret might slip, Hermes' master, lurking in the shadows, snaps at him to stop talking about her. Hermes clamps his mouth shut, refusing to spill a single detail and guarding his mentor's identity. Duke Trochea, head of the noble house, grills Hermes mercilessly, but Hermes clamps his mouth shut and refuses to spill a single secret about his master. Hermes vows his choice isn't born of fear or some boss's command, but of fierce loyalty and respect. He refuses to betray his teacher's teachings or trust and will shield his mentor's identity with unshakable resolve. The Duke presses for answers about Hermes' magic, demanding to know if it can copy lineage magics. Hermes coolly corrects him. It's not a copy at all. It's a complete recreation, rebuilt from strict observation and theory. Badgered about hard limits, whether a spell can only be unleashed a set number of times, or if spells can be swapped out. Hermes smirks and declares there are no limits. He can unleash the recreated magic again and again, and every previous spell stays fully active with no restrictions. The Duke reels Hermes' magic can replicate any spell without restriction and run forever, and he knows it could topple the very pillars of noble society. He corners Hermes and fires off a single brutal question. What's your goal, and why return to the royal capital now that you're bristling with power? Then accuses him of hiding motives for saving Katja and vows he won't accept him until those reasons are laid bare. Suspicion flared in the Duke. He doubted Hermes' intentions and was convinced the man was scheming to worm his way back into noble circles with ulterior motives. Hermes cuts to the chase, owns that distrust is natural, then declares he's not here to sow sorrow or to bend anyone's will. He's on a relentless hunt for a magic he can call his own. Hermes squares up to the Duke, unflinching, and lays bare his true ambition. He rejects prestige and refuses to reconcile with the nobility. He craves only to forge a magic that's his alone, born from sweat and study, not inherited, and Hermes reveals his lifelong dream. To unravel how magic is made, and one day, craft a spell that belongs only to him. Galvanized by his master, he vows to forge something more beautiful than hereditary magic, living proof that he carved his own existence with sweat and iron will. Hermes admits he swooped in for Katia because, even when outmatched, she put everyone else before herself. Seeing she was still the same kind girl who'd stood by him, a fierce fire to repay her kindness ignited in his chest. The Duke scoffs that Hermes' reasoning looks naive at first glance, but concedes that, as a father, a burst of pride lit him up as someone poured all their trust into his daughter. At last he exhales, relief crashing through him. Hermes will protect Kaya. Katia flushes crimson at her dad's remark and bolts forward, babbling that Hermes isn't thinking of her like that. Inside, she secretly revels that Hermes will forever stand guard at her side, even as she forces a smile and buries the storm in her chest. Hermes lets out a breath of relief. Everything turned out better than he'd expected. He thanks Katia for the warm welcome, and though he'd braced to sleep under the stars, she ushers him into a cozy, comfortable room. Cold clarity seizes him. Lord Juogen must publicly denounce his brother. Prince Aster issued the command, and for now the enemies will be held at bay. Hermes braced, the duty to guard Katia snapping onto him like armor. Danger could erupt from any shadow. Katia stepped onto the balcony. She rings him, breathless and urgent. So much has happened, we never got a proper chance to talk. Hermes blurts that he'd been wondering how she ended up so breathtaking, and Katja freezes, cheeks flaming with shocked embarrassment. They snap that he's grown too blunt. Hermes reels at their reaction, and Katja's chest tightens as she remembers the shy, gentle praises he used to give. Hermes stiffens and forces himself into formal titles to keep his distance now that their social ranks changed, and Katia snaps that he should call her like before. He's her attendant and must obey his employer. Hermes finally relents, confusion still flickering in his eyes, and whispers Kati. Her cheeks flare scarlet while a satisfied smile hides beneath the blush. Beneath the moonlit sky, Kaka presses Hermes about his master. Hermes clamps his mouth. He can't say much because of the master's social rank, but admits the man was branded a failure. Hermes declares with blazing confidence that his master is the world's most amazing magician and will forever be his number one when it comes to magic. Hermes leans forward and asks how Katia's last 5 years went. She replies that so much happened, mostly her engagement to Prince Aster. Hermes gapes, forced to accept she's truly betrothed to the prince. Katia says that now she has a fiancé. Not even he, her childhood friend and servant, could be with her at that hour of the night. Katia drops a bomb. Her engagement to Prince Aster was called off last month. She declares she's now nothing but the cast-off daughter of a noble, smiling serenely as if none of it cuts her. Hermes suits up in formal wear, and Layla lights up, declaring he looks stunning and that Katia will absolutely fall for it. Hermes barreled down the stairs and froze. The house was oddly empty, almost no servants clustered near Katja. Then Layla stepped forward and asked to speak with him privately on his first day as a guard. Hermes fires off the question, does Katia have anyone she can really trust in the capital? Layla's answer cuts through, no one. As a duke's daughter, Katia can't open up because everyone only ever comes for their own gain. Layla implores Hermes, be Katia's emotional anchor, someone who truly understands her feelings and will never abandon her. Hermes' mind races over the 5 years he spent away from the capital, Katia buffeted by the harsh life of a duke's daughter, her engagement torn apart, and his resolve snaps into place. He must support her now more than ever, but as he's about to leave, her excited call hits him like lightning. Hermes sweeps in, immaculate in formal attire, apologizing for the delay. When Katia sees him, she goes bright red, hides her face and pleads with him not to come any closer for a while. The other girls rush in to lift her spirits, insisting she's simply dazzled, while Hermes freezes, incredulous, wondering if he actually pulled off looking that good in those clothes. Clad in his new uniform, Hermes steps forward and formally introduces himself to Katia, his voice warm and sincere as he declares it will be a pleasure to care for her. As her childhood friend and attendant, he vows to stay by her side and support her from now on. Kati still feels the moment her mother walked away when she was only a child. Desperate, she bolts after her, sobbing and begging her not to go. In Katia's memory, her mother smiles warmly, and as she turns to leave, implores Katia to never forget her. At the threshold, Katia's mother hurled one last, searing command. Magic isn't for domination, it's a shield for the weak, and if you want real happiness, defend the joy of others. Katia sprinted after her, desperation clawing at her throat, as the final, trembling request reached her, become a noble worthy of respect. Katja screams for her mother as a devastating attack rips the city apart. Flames and wreckage pin her in place, fear flooding her veins, and through stinging tears she thrusts a trembling hand forward, begging it not to be true, crushed by helplessness and pain. Katia surfaces from sleep in silence, eyes lost in thought as old memories still mark her. She stares at the family portrait, murmurs, "Good morning, Mom," with aching affection, and a few days later Hermes steps up as her official guard, kicking off a brand new chapter by her side. During the meeting, a breathless soldier bursts in to declare a dungeon has been unearthed in the Havai Mountains, right on another count's border. Monsters swarmed a village, but miraculously no one died. Facing the threat, the Duke orders the civilians evacuated and prepares to confront it, but his soldiers are tied up. Katia, eyes blazing, steps forward and offers to handle it herself. Katja plants herself at the attack site, fiercely defending her choice and roaring that as a noble with lineage magic, she's sworn to protect the people. The Duke falters at first, then sees her iron resolve, grants his blessing, and reminds her she's always defended others and vowed to her mother to become a noble who commands respect. Hermes steps up, vowing to shield Katia once more. The Duke, trusting him, orders him to take soldiers and fall back at the first sign of danger. Hermes' mind snapped to Katja's mother, soft with kindness, steel with courage. They were both 6 when one of them hurled themselves between the city and a ravenous horde of monsters and paid with their life. Katia still cradles that memory, warm with affection. Marching with the soldiers, Katja shot him, ever fought monsters, and Hermes met her eyes, low and steady, yeah, during training. Katia slammed the warning. Monsters are multiplying at a terrifying pace, and if left unchecked they'll grow deadly enough to threaten all of humanity. Right now they are the greatest threat to the people of the nation. Katia warns that those weird, labyrinthine structures with tangled interiors are monster dens, dungeons that become monster bases, and when hordes swell inside they erupt into kingdom-shattering disasters. A knight explodes at Katia, roaring that she hired Hermes. He's only a boy and can't be made responsible for this deadly mission. He barks that dungeon diving is a death sentence and a crushing weight to bear. Katja firm fires back that she picked Hermes for his raw skill. Her choice was merit, not friendship. Katia and Hermes watch as an arrogant man named Count Eldridge strides up to them. Someone taunts her as a flawed young lady, igniting the air. The Count bursts in, all hostility and disdain. Barking why she's here, Hermes freezes, recognizing the name and remembering his territory borders Katia's. Count Eldridge slammed his fist, trying to seize command. "I'll conquer the dungeon this instant," Katia leave. The Count goads her again, taunting that she should be moved because he bore her burden. Katia snaps that the land answers to her duchy, and Hermes watches in cold silence, irritation sparking at the Count's arrogance. Count Eldridge snaps, his composure shattering, as he hurls a venomous barrage of insults at Katia. He explodes at her, accusing her of trying to steal the dungeon's credit, spitting useless, and sneering that the prince rejected her, and she can't even use magic. Hermes winces in clear discomfort while Katia listens, serious but visibly shaken. Eldridge cranked his arrogance up and shouted that he was God's chosen. Suddenly, a monstrous beast exploded from the shadows and blindsided him. Hermes bolts forward and annihilates the creature in a heartbeat, right before everyone's eyes. With a calm, unreadable face, he tosses out a sarcastic apology, insisting he only acted because he thought Eldridge was in danger. With a calm, almost polite smile, Hermes taunts Eldridge, asks what the cost would be if they ignored a surprise attack, then strips his arrogance bare in front of everyone, revealing he never even noticed the monster sneaking up. Rage detonates in the Count. Humiliated by someone he'd dismissed as a mere servant, he erupts into blinding fury. Hermes laughs with a sharp, ironic grin. "I only wanted to help," he says, a mere untrained boy, then needles Eldridge, taunting that the Count should be on his knees, tears of gratitude streaking down his face. Humiliation boiled over in Eldridge as he bellowed at his soldiers, threatening revenge and swearing he'd never forget Hermes' face. The others gaped, jaws dropping at Hermes' calm, razor-sharp handling of the situation. Hermes blurts a quick apology, admitting he'd gotten carried away. The guard's voice breaks as he confesses he was wrong, ashamed he judged him by his looks, and hails his courage for standing up to a Count to defend his master. Katia exhales, relief blooming as she watches them reconcile. The soldiers erupted in cheers and charged on with the mission, bonded into a single, unstoppable unit. Hermes snaps off razor-precise spells, cutting down several monsters in an instant. He seizes total control of the scene. Katia watches his skill, flashes a confident smile, and hails his flawless efficiency. She now trusts him completely as her guardian. Hermes grins and reveals he's fused general magic with effects from Estelle of the Origin, letting him hurl spells without a single incantation. It doesn't pack the raw power of lineage magic, but its speed and efficiency leave everyone stunned. Soldiers roar praise for the dungeon's progress, shouting that every hard-won step comes from Hermes' support. Katia and her guards stride on with fierce confidence, then something sudden snatches their focus. The group stumbles into the path of a colossal, menacing creature that thrums and crackles with raw, overpowering magic. Hermes' gut screams. This raw, crushing energy can mean only one thing. The dungeon's boss has arrived, and the air snaps taut as everyone braces for the decisive showdown. Hermes zeroes in and spits the name, Dragon Turtle, the black tortoise. Its shell is a lie. It's a full dragon, and he smirks that he's fought these in training. With Count Eldridge's fate burning in her thoughts, Iami urges a temporary retreat to rally reinforcements and map out their next move with the Justice Minister backing them. The dragon turtle's roar detonates through the air, wrecking any chance to retreat. Hermes and Katja are blindsided by its sudden hostility, snapping to attention as danger barrels toward them. The dragon turtle slams into the earth with bone-crushing force, making the entire structure shudder violently. Hermes throws his body over Katia as the path rips away beneath their feet. Soldiers scramble to flee, but devastation surges like wildfire, and the whole scene spirals toward catastrophe. A last-second protective barrier flares to life, shielding the group and snatching survival from the jaws of annihilation. Hermes breathes relief. Katia's fine. Then his voice drops. The escape route's been obliterated. Cut off, they must confront the dungeon boss with no chance to retreat. The tortoise dragon rips a bone-shaking roar and barrels into the group's barrier, shredding stone and hurling debris everywhere. Hermes plants himself before Katia and the soldiers, eyes aflame as he braces to meet the beast head-on, and the chapter slams shut on a razor edge of tension. The decisive battle has begun. The tortoise dragon lunges forward, its hulking frame moving with lightning-fast speed that downright defies its size. The beast drove an enormous paw at the knights. One soldier went flying, and the captain barely deflected the strike. Even braced, the impact rocked him, and he realized this fight would be far tougher than he'd expected. Hermes locks his gaze, channels pinpoint magic, and unleashes a barrage of direct shots at the tortoise dragon, explosions blooming over its body and racing into jagged cracks along its shell. Seeing his normal attacks bounce off, Hermes snaps, "Katia, unleash your lineage magic." She wastes no time and readies a devastating spell. As the dragon reels back, Katia lifts her hand and unleashes Satria Trivia, ancient magic roaring to life as raw energy coils around her, proof they're about to strike with everything they've got. The tortoise dragon surges forward at blistering speed, slipping cleanly past Katia's strike. Amazement lights her eyes at the creature's blinding agility. Before she can act again, Hermes slides in at her side, shoots out a firm hand, and declares he'll help, ready to act together. Hermes' fingers traced a razor-precise sigil, then he unleashed the blood chain. They hurled glowing chains that pinned the tortoise dragon midair before it could strike. It hung immobilized, unable to advance, and Katja gaped, feeling the raw power and perfect sync between them in the fight. Hermes' chains bite down, but the tortoise dragon detonates a raw force blast that tears through part of its bonds. Soldiers freeze in shock as Katia and Hermes see it still monstrously powerful, and Katia snaps in furious frustration, realizing they underestimated the enemy. Hermes watches the dragon slam up a shimmering barrier that effortlessly swallows their previous attack. The beast exhales a lineage-like aura Hermes recognizes instantly, the same deadly pulse from his past, and he realizes the enemy is far more formidable than they imagined. Hermes flashes back to the savage dragon he fought a year ago, scorched air, bone-shattering blows, and the white-hot terror of battling for his life. Hermes feels the enemy's magic slam into him. It's identical to the red dragon he once fought with his master, snapping him to full alert. This foe, like that dragon, is immune to conventional spells. From a past dungeon, he learned the only way to beat such beasts is a different tactic, and now, jaw clenched, he forges a plan because raw magic won't be enough. The knights hurled themselves forward, desperate to shield Katia. One of them roared at her, "Flee with Hermes, go get reinforcements." Katia plants her feet and flat-out refuses to abandon her comrades on the battlefield, danger bearing down. She vows she won't leave them, her resolve and sense of duty blazing. Katia freezes mid-step, the sick thought of abandoning her comrades shredding through her resolve. Awareness of the sacrifice they're making crashes into her, but the terror of losing them pins her to the spot. Amid the confusion and pain, she fumbles for a choice until her mother's memory blooms before her, a steady voice and living example steering her toward the right decision. Hermes clutches Katia to his chest and bellows her name like a lifeline. He bellows that only one strike can shatter the dragon's barrier, but to unleash it, he must carve out time to charge and chant the spell, and with the threat closing in around them, they both know pulling this off will make or break the fight. Hermes steals his voice and snaps, "Hold that dragon still for 5 seconds. Just 5 seconds to unleash the decisive strike that could flip the entire battle." Hermes explodes into a sprint, channeling every ounce of magic as he traces a blazing magic circle with his hand. The dragon's eyes lock on the movement, then it explodes forward in a savage charge to attack. Hermes darts aside with cat-like agility, his gaze razor-sharp as he charges the decisive spell. Hermes surges forward, weaving through the dragon's strikes as magic fortifies his body, and the knights stare in awe, saying he's holding his own against a seasoned warrior, his blend of speed and sorcery devastating on the battlefield. As Hermes charged full tilt, the dragon lunged to crush him, one of the knights. He lunges into the path, slams his sword up to stop the blow, and bellows that he won't allow it. A vital opening yawned, letting Hermes surge forward untouched. The knight's hero block bought the team the window to batter the dragon to its knees, and Katja, seizing the moment, tensed for her finishing move as the beast roared in pain. Katja hurls the last of her magic around the dragon, her strength scraping the edge, yet she plants her feet and clamps it down for a single breath, buying the final attack the opening it needs. Hermes roared praise at Katja, she'd bought them the time they needed. With the final magic humming at full charge, he slams out a titanic fire spell, aimed to punch through the dragon's defenses in one devastating strike. Hermes seals the spell with razor-sharp precision. Recreating the devastating technique called alternate dragon breath, they unleashed an ocean of flame that swallowed the enemy dragon whole and struck dead center with a force that rivaled a true dragon's breath. Hermes' attack rips into the dragon, which screams as searing flames consume its body, shattering its magical defense and dragging it into an all-consuming inferno. He crumpled beneath the recreated magic's crushing impact. They wring the dragon's fallen body, eyes razor-sharp and muscles coiled, every step measured as if the beast might lunge back to life. Hermes watched in cold silence, analyzing every move as a knight erupted into triumphant cheers, sure they'd won, and Katja, stunned, realized the magic Hermes used was unlike anything she'd seen. It seized her attention. Hermes grins, drops the bomb, and admits he copied a dragon's magic from another dungeon and used it. With Isla of the Origin's help, he reforged a technique that can mimic any magic, even the powers of high-level monsters, eclipsing lineage magic. Katja, stunned and deeply moved by Hermes' skill, pours out a sincere praise that he's become an incredible mage, and when he asks if she's hurt, she denies it, hiding what she really feels. Katja shuddered, then burst out, "I feel useless." Even with lineage magic hailed as one of the mightiest, capable of felling dragons, she still couldn't come through like she'd expected. She compares herself to Hermes, crying out that the world has branded her a defective young lady who can't use magic. Katja tortures herself with guilt, convincing she failed to unleash her full power when it mattered, that her weakness put everyone in danger, and that Hermes must be disappointed. Hermes, though gently says her name, clasps her hand and radiates calm respect, not blame. Hermes locks eyes with Katja and snaps, "When they called me useless and talentless, were you ever disappointed in me?" Scarred by how people treated him, he plants his feet, declares he's not disappointed in her, then echoes her exact words back as a solemn pledge of trust. Katja's jaw drops, surprise and a swell of pride crashing through her, as she remembers once thinking he'd never become a great mage. Now she knows she was completely wrong. Hermes proclaims that anyone who fights like Katja is bound to become a great mage. Spotting something choking her magic, he directly asks to recreate her spell Satria Trivia with his own power, radiating absolute faith in her, and determined to expose what's caging her abilities. The boy lanes in, declares he's going to recreate the spell Soteria Trivia, and, brandishing the Stele of the Origin, proves he must plunge into the original magic's very core to remake it. Her gaze pins him. She sees lineage magic's fatal flaw. It's so maddeningly intricate that even those born to it can miss crucial details. He snaps that lineage mages use their power instinctively. They don't need to know its inner workings, like swinging an arm without knowing the bones, so they stay blind to hidden side effects and errors. Watching the girl fumble, he suspects that's wrecking her magic and vows to personally hunt down the root of her problem. Count Eldridge crashes into the chamber where the two young ones stand, spots the dungeon boss already felled, and grins. His path just got a whole lot easier. Ignoring everyone else, the Count charges up the stairs with his soldiers at his heels. The girl gasps and reaches out to stop him, but he shrugs off her protests and keeps climbing. Count Eldridge unearths a famed artifact in the dungeon, and his blood races as he imagines gifting it to the royal family, treasure overflowing, vast estates granted, and his noble title elevated. She storms up to Count Eldridge, accusing him of scheming to snatch the credit for conquering the dungeon and slaying its boss. The Count explodes, roaring that the victory was his by right and accusing her group of snatching his hard-won glory, while the two young ones stand aside, seething and watching his every move with sharp suspicion. She slams the dragon's carcass down like irrefutable evidence, roaring that it proves who truly felled the dungeon boss and ordering Count Eldridge to stop twisting the truth. The Count's grin turns venomous as he plots to wipe out every trace, even the monster's carcass, since they're stranded in the mountains with no other witnesses. Count Eldridge slams into his lineage magic, Iolos. A colossal rune circle erupts behind him as he bends the southern, northern, and divine winds into a roaring vortex, poised to unleash a massive, devastating spell. The Count sneered and unleashed his ancestral bloodline magic, every pulse dripping with smug contempt. He goaded her, branding her defective and sneering that she'd never break his spell. He thunders that magical strength rules that country and sneers at anyone he brands weak. The girl and the boy steel themselves, bracing for the threat barreling toward them. The Count snarled that if her magic were truly superior, he'd have to accept her argument and retreat. Katia, rage boiling, admitted his power and knew she'd have to overcome it somehow. Then a boy stepped forward and offered advice, tracing a way forward. The boy declares magic ignites from emotion, and he suspects Katia's spells falter because her feelings are tangled and firing the wrong way whenever she reaches for power. He hammers home that only the raw sincerity of your feelings can charge a spell with true emotional power. He warns that most people can't even grasp their true feelings, and that inner confusion guts their spellcasting. Katia plunges into the truth behind her spell. She'd told herself it was to end the Count's abuses or to strike back at his provocation, but those were just surface excuses. The real intimate spark is her longing, as a noble, to stand for justice and righteousness. Katia's chest tightens as she realizes she's been stifling her feelings to uphold duty and the immaculate mask of a noble, and remembering the expectations forced on her, she sees she was only living by everyone else's script. Standing before the raw truth, her heart at last lays its secret bare. She finally knows what it's been hiding. Consumed by raw feeling, Katia erupts and unleashes a blazing torrent of magic. She erupted in outrage when she saw the Count try to steal credit for work he never touched, dismissing the sweat and danger she and others endured. Indignation sharpened her resolve into a blade of justice. She would never tolerate this disrespect again. Katia finally unleashes her full lineage magic, blasting the Count into stunned silence. Eldridge gapes, confusion roaring through him as he realizes this spell is unlike anything he's ever heard. Katia squared up to him, eyes blazing, and snapped, "You should be ashamed of your actions." Katia chants the Soteria trivia, conjuring armed skeletal warriors that surge and slam into the Count. Eldridge, gripped by terror, scrambles back in blind panic, unable to react to the true power she's awakened. The Count snarled a defense, insisting Katia's magic is just smoke and mirrors and warning it will wreck her name even more as he loomed to cow them. The boy sneers, flinging the Count's own words back. "You said there were no witnesses," he spits, then smirks and dares them to destroy every trace, echoing the Count's exact threat. The boy goads the Count, sneering that if the Count falls to Katia's magic, everyone will claim a monster did it, since the lingering magical signature points straight to her. Eldridge explodes into panic, shrieking to drag the creature away and spitting frantic orders, while the boy stays ice-cold, lifts a hand and makes it painfully clear he's the one in control. One of Katia's allies laid the Count's knights out cold, roaring that he needed to release his pent-up anger. Shock and panic slam into Eldridge as he crumples to the ground begging for mercy, while the boy meets him with a calm, iron stare and puts the decision in the Count's hands. Eldridge knows exactly what he must do to be spared. Cornered with every escape cut off, Count Eldridge crumples and surrenders, his face a hollow mask of defeat. He thunders that the artifact belongs to them, crowning their right to the dungeon. "Caught you," he calls to the boy and the others as the staff levitates into their hands, officially theirs. The humiliated Count bolts away while the group explodes into roaring, triumphant cheers, finally safe. Katia gaped at the surge of power and demanded the boy tell her if he'd helped. He shook his head, insisting the magic came from her, and tears stung as she realized she'd just unleashed that fierce spell alone for the first time. The boy throws praise at Katia, gasping that this was the most breathtaking spell she's ever cast. Still reeling, she admits that even though the magic runs in her noble blood, something crucial is missing. He presses her, declaring this isn't the limit of her power and she has to feel it too. Katia leaned in, eyes blazing, and challenged him, "Can you awaken a power like mine too?" He grins with fierce confidence and declares he believes it, revealing a personal hunger for her magic and voicing his desire to wield that incredible power. Katia, moved to her core, pleads, "You don't have to hold back. It's the smallest thing she can offer for everything he's done for her." A few days later, the Duke's residence lay cloaked in a rare, breath-held hush. Katia lifted a steaming cup of black tea and raved about its flavor. The boy grinned and admitted he'd brewed that very tea for his former master all the time. She praised his skill, and he beamed, thrilled he'd matched her taste. Hermes dazzles the mansion's servants with flawless domestic mastery, their praise ringing that his chores rival a seasoned professional's. Katia, hearing him offer, respectfully, to do anything she asks, freezes and chokes on her tea as the others rush over to check if she's okay. After the tea accident, a servant rushes in to ease the silence and blurts to Katia that her feelings for Hermes are painfully obvious. Katia plunges into denial, insisting she can't admit it, spinning excuses about their social divide and how he must view the relationship as beneath him, but her voice cracks and her eyes give her away. Katia's emotions are a whirlwind. She can't pin down what she feels, and is terrified Hermes will call her fickle after her engagement just fell apart. Servants swarm to her side, frantic to soothe and steady her. Katia's chest tightens. Hermes, who once laughed with bright innocence, is gone. A quiet maturity and cool distance have taken his place, and she's left unsure how to reach him. Kati confesses, feeling selfish and with guilt gnawing at her, that she craves Hermes' attention. He tossed her a casual compliment like it meant nothing, and she seethed with frustration. The servant reads her in an instant and grasps that Katia wants the naive, shy Hermes, the boy from before, to show up. More emotional, more spontaneous. Cheeks flushed, Katia sheepishly agrees. The servant, eyes blazing and practically vibrating with excitement, shouted he'd found a clear way to pry more emotion out of Hermes. Katia has to go on that date with him, no backing out. The direct suggestion blindsides Katia, knocking the wind from her as her mouth snaps shut and shock pins her speechless. The chapter explodes open as the servant drops a bombshell. He wants to arrange a date between Katia and Hermes. She practically sprints through her idea, roam the capital like ordinary kids, soak up the moment, and let Katia's charm steal the show, already buzzing as she pins down an itinerary, while Katia, desperate, snatches at the plans and fights to rein in the whirlwind before decisions are forced on her. The servant grabs Katia's sleeve, locking onto the dark crescents under her eyes and snapping that she hasn't rested since the dungeon conquest. She spent the whole night buried in reports of the monster damage. Shock cracks through Katia as she realizes even her father, Lord Jurgen, feared for her well-being. In another wing of the mansion, he admits that, since his wife's death, Katia has thrown herself into fulfilling her duties as a noble. Katia's breath caught when her father confessed. He regretted that her devotion to noble duties had stolen her freedom, and he insisted she deserved to be a girl her age and let herself have fun sometimes. His words strike her to the core. Katia steels herself, invites Hermes out, and vows to see where it leads. The next day, Katia and Hermes burst out together, strolling side by side through the glittering heart of the royal capital. Hermes stares over the city, nostalgia crashing in as childhood memories surge. He thanks Katia for the invite, admits he'd already planned to visit, and beams with obvious joy. Katia blushes, shuffles shyly, still getting used to the moment. Before the date, the servant gripped Katia's shoulders and insisted she needn't worry about the breakup with the prince. It was obvious there had been no affection between them, and he had been the one to propose the union. She urges Katia to be honest with her heart and to truly enjoy the day. Katia, struck by the words, opens to her feelings and feels courage ignite, pushing her forward. Cut to Hermes' words crashing back. He said sincere feelings supercharge magic. A gentle grin brightens her face, eyes sparkling as she thrusts her hand forward with blazing resolve. She's finally embraced her feelings and will speak them aloud without fear. Cheeks flaming and jaw set, Katia grabbed Hermes' hand and strode beside him. He blinked, asking why, and she scrambled to cover the gesture, insisting the capital's crowds would be a problem if they got lost, cheeks burning as she plays it off as natural, but the gesture screams her true feelings. Katia, still gripping Hermes' hand, tugged him eagerly as she streaked through the capital. She whisks him through the city's main sights, the bustling market and the quiet residential areas, explaining everything with natural ease. Hermes follows attentively, stunned by her infectious enthusiasm and the sudden new dynamic between them. Nostalgia clawed at Hermes' chest as he walked beside Katia. I remember how she'd yank him from his spellbooks and haul him into the sunlight for walks whenever he dove headfirst into studying magic. A grin blooms on his face as he relives that moment, but when familiar faces appear, he and Katia go scarlet over their hand-holding and fumble to hide their embarrassment as they walk. Merchants surge toward Katia and Hermes, spotting Katia at once and roaring their thanks for everyone to hear. They say that before racing to the capital, Katia pulled them out of a disaster cooked up by a crooked supplier. Her lightning-fast intervention yanked the store back from the brink of bankruptcy. Hermes freezes, stunned to realize Katia quietly changes people without bragging. Katia waves it off, just my duty as a noble, and the merchant snaps that almost no noble would bother with a humble shop like theirs. Soon after, she catches them hand in hand and blurts, "Are you two on a secret date?" Kadia's panic flares and she scrambles to cover her tracks, blurting, "I'm just showing the city to my new assistant," while the merchant watches the scene, laughing behind his hand. The merchant beckons Kadia and Hermes into her glittering jewel boutique favored by nobles, and Kadia flushes with awkwardness, but forces a smile and agrees to go in. Hermes confesses he knows next to nothing about jewelry, which floors Kadia. She'd assumed every noble cared about such things. She just grins and declares she's passionate about fashion and loves dressing well. Katja confesses to Hermes she adores fashion, but never felt dressing up for someone was worth it. Then, voice cracking, she says of her ex-fiancé that no matter what she did, it never changed a thing. He'd never truly see her. Hermes falls silent, silence swallowing the room as her sincerity lands like a punch. Herm confesses he's always been drawn to beauty. Magic stole his heart the moment he recognized its grace, and people pull him in the same way. Herm confessed he'd love to watch someone already beautiful become even more captivating. When he said he'd love to see Keisha wearing a jewel from the store, she gasped, flushed, and melted into embarrassed silence. The saleswoman catches the charged air, teases, looks like things are heating up, and beams, wishing the couple every happiness. Cheeks aflame and frantic, Kadia barges in and throws every conversation into stunned silence. He yanked Herm out of the store, breathlessly insisting it wasn't what it looked like. Later that night, frustration still gnawed at her. She screamed she couldn't believe what had happened. Kadia seethed, cheeks flaming with embarrassment. She gaped, stunned that Herm could coolly spit out those awkward lines in public. His words about wanting to see her even more beautiful replayed in her head as she buried her face in the pillow, cheeks burning with a blush. Later, she speaks to Layla and discovers the court will throw a lavish celebration in her honor for delivering the artifact to the royal family. Keisha grabs my sleeve and begs for help picking the dress she'll wear to the party. She's determined to look impeccably dressed. She astonishes Layla by unexpectedly tending to her appearance, something she'd never cared about before, and that sudden warmth melts Layla into agreeing to help. Caddy points at a shop and urges them to snag the perfect accessory to match. The celebration explodes into life as nobles pack the hall, and Hermes scans the room, awed by the flood of power. Standing at Keisha's side, doubt claws at him. Was he truly the right companion, or just shoved into the role despite heavy recommendations? Keisha swept into the party in an elegant dress, every gaze snapping to her. Her beauty struck Hermes dumb, heads whipped to her, and that electric hush turned their encounter into a defining moment between them. Keisha bites her lip and, voice trembling, asks how she looks in the dress. Hermes freezes, knocked breathless by her beauty, clasps her hand, fumbles for words, then finally, sincere and breathless, tells her she looks impossibly beautiful. Shock rips through Kadia, her cheeks blaze, and she stands rooted, unable to respond. At the party, everyone turned to Kadia, swooning at her beauty, admiring her impeccable manners, and whispering that her magic has suddenly surged. Eldridge's name explodes through the crowd. Whispers say she banished him with lineage magic, and Hermes feels every eye snap to her. Lord Juogen roared his thanks to Hermes for helping Keisha conquer her struggles with magic. Hermes shrugs, downplaying it. He only handed her the chance. Juogen exhales, satisfied, and insists he chose right by trusting him. Hermes demanded why Lord Juogen would trust him with no guarantees, and Juogen replied coolly that part of the reason was the suspicion Hermes might be tied to the Fenrir bird. He trusted Keisha without reservation, and Hermes had already shown that same unshakable faith in her. Juogen leans in, eyes blazing. He knows who Hermes' master is, and only one woman could have bestowed that impossible magic, her. Juogen confesses his late wife was entangled with that mysterious woman, then leans in and tells Hermes that, as far as he can tell, no one but him has traced the magic's origin back to her. Hermes reels as the truth slams into him. Kadia's mother might be tied to the mystery behind his magic. Juogen tells him to go to Keisha. Hermes strides off with his mind racing, realizing Juogen isn't ordinary after extracting so much from just a few words. He strides forward as the butler booms his arrival right in front of Keisha. Hermes spots Keisha being intercepted by Karl von Hartnett, a count from the west who sweeps in with a marriage proposal, boasting he's heard she smashed her magical limits. Keisha refuses with polite steel, but the count insists she at least meet his son as Hermes watches with wary eyes. Keisha fixes him with a fierce look, declares her engagement to the second prince ended last month, and presses Count Hartnett to reconsider his proposal. The count brushed off her plea, lauded Keisha's razor-sharp mind and rare talent, and tore into the prince for letting such a treasure go, while Hermes sat mute, irritation coiling as the count's insistence grated on him. The second prince bursts in, cutting the conversation dead with a razor stare and a suffocating, crushing aura. He snarled for answers, demanding who'd spoken his name and vowing to drag anyone who had into the open. Hermes froze. It's the kingdom's second prince, Kadia's ex-fiancé, the very man who ordered his banishment, and the memory of that command drained the color from his face. Hermes and the second prince locked eyes, the air crackling between them in front of the hall's staircase. Tension crackled through the air as Hermes locked onto the prince, the very man who had personally expelled him. Tension crackled as Sarah strode into view at the prince's side. Surprise explodes through Kadia. She locks eyes and recognizes her in a heartbeat. The second prince burst into the hall without warning, freezing the crowd. Hermes gaped as murmurs and pointed questions ricocheted through the room, tension snapping taut. Nobody expected him at the event. Hermes' eyes snapped to Aster, Keisha's ex-fiancé, the very man who banished her years ago. He questions why he's even at Kadia's victory party. Then Kadia pins Sarah with a fierce stare and demands an answer. He's cut off before he can say a word, stunned by Sarah's bold initiative. Aster, the arrogant second prince, sneered that Kadia was useless, stormed up to Count Hartnett over his marriage proposal, and warned that such a match would be a blatant insult to his authority. Panic flashes across Hartnett's face as he scrambles for an excuse, stammering that he only heard rumors. Aster waves off every excuse and boots everyone from the party, even the celebration for his ex-fiancée, then turns on Karl von Hartnett and brands him a traitor, roaring that Karl's words and actions scream of a brewing rebellion. Aster storms into the room and publicly brands him a criminal, declaring he came to the party to shatter that false impression. Karl panics, drops to his knees, begging for forgiveness and shouting that it's all a misunderstanding as guards seize him and pin him down before everyone. Prince Aster sneers, taunting that Keisha's sudden fame tricked her into thinking she'd conquered her magic flaw and reclaimed that rare artifact. He belittles her achievements, calls them lies and taunts. "Do you miss being my fiancé?" Kadia tries to answer firmly, denying every falsehood, but Aster cuts her off with a cold, authoritative snap. Rage ripped through his store as he accused Kadia of weaponizing every conversation to serve her own advantage. He cuts her off in front of everyone, proclaiming he'll never marry her again. Kadia fires a firm, crystal-clear rejection. Astor smirks, drops that he's already found someone else, then walks off radiating cold contempt and indifference. Aster stormed into the hall and unveiled his new fiancée to the gasping crowd, Sarah von Hartmann, daughter of a noble. The welcome snaps cold and calculated as Sarah, stone-faced, claims Keisha's seat. Aster lavishes over-the-top praise, anointing Sarah's beauty, shy charm, and magic above Keisha's while pretending her lowborn roots don't matter. Kadia's eyes snapped open. She admitted she knew Sarah from school, and the reunion crackled as their buried past bubbled back up. Keisha sizes up Sarah, convinced she isn't ready to shoulder the crushing weight of being a royal's fiancé. Kadia storms forward and calls her out. "Do you have the courage to handle everything this position demands?" Her unyielding firmness leaves Sarah speechless. His Aster storms in, fury blazing, desperate to shut the conversation down. Aster flips the script, lunging at Keisha with explosive claims that jealousy made her cruel to Sarah and that she abused her position at school to intimidate her. The accusation explodes into the room, freezing every face into stunned silence. Doubt exploded in them about Kadia the instant the prince's words hit. Aster plants himself before everyone and proclaims, "My words are true." He corners Sarah, browbeating her into confirming his accusations. Kadia's breath catches. No matter how they scramble to defend themselves, it won't be enough. Every head bowed, not a soul dared question the prince's word. Crushed by the pressure, Sarah falters but forces out a shaky confirmation of the prince's words, doubt flickering in her eyes. Aster pounces, slamming a public accusation that Keisha's true face has finally been exposed, and Prince Aster begins twisting the crowd to his will. They sneered that a girl labeled defective couldn't legitimately awaken magic and hinted Kadia pulled tricks. The crowd, swayed, begins to doubt her achievements as Hermes watches how easily everyone accepts the prince's words. A colossal monster crashes onto the assembly hall grounds, freezing the guests mid-breath in pure horror. The guard lunges to contain it, but the creature's raw power overwhelms him and turns the venue into chaos. Hermes and Keisha sprint toward the noise and find a lone knight locked in brutal combat with an immense wyvern. Panic rips through the crowd as the wyvern looms over them. Keisha snaps at Hermes to ready for battle. The soldiers fall back from the danger, and Prince Astor storms forward, daring Sarah to prove her worth. She unleashed her magic for everyone to see. Keisha's realization hits like a punch. The monster was staged, Prince Aster's too perfect arrival, and his sudden rush to seize command of the defense scream foul play. As her carefully crafted plan unfurls and every move clicks into place, Sarah steels herself, ready to spring into action. Sarah ignited her lineage magic, her power erupting before everyone's eyes. She unleashed a potent healing spell as a soft, luminous wave swept the hall, sealing wounds in a heartbeat and leaving everyone gaping at her power. Sarah's voice blazed on, each syllable setting the air alight with raw magic. She reveals a dual aptitude for lineage magic. Everyone freezes in awe as she rips open an even mightier spell, demolishing every expectation of her power. The prince gapes as Sarah hurls her final incantation, slamming the wyvern into a crackling, impenetrable prison where it thrashes and roars but cannot break free. A shadowy stranger storms into the scene and erupts with fierce praise for her hard-won achievement. He steps up to handle the rest as the prince unleashes towering magic. Flames and sacred sigils whirl around him, birthing a searing aura of celestial judgment. The prince unleashes Ahura Mazda, his most potent lineage magic, and a blinding tide of raw power floods the area. Confidence burned in his gaze, and an arrogant smile curled his lips, certain of victory. He readied himself to judge everyone around him with the absolute power he'd invoked. The prince unleashes a devastating torrent of holy flame, mercilessly turning the monster to cinders, then fixes an icy glare on the smoking ruin and snaps. Your fate was sealed the moment you crossed my path. Flames devour the monster, its scream ripping the air as it crumbles to ash and disappears completely. The power detonates so violently that everyone scrambles to shield themselves as a shockwave rips through the hall, battering everything with crushing force. The monster's body slammed to the ground, charred and defeated smoke still curling up as the group stood in stunned silence watching the battle end, the air heavy and the guests staring, shaken to their cores by the raw power they'd witnessed. Amid the crowd's uproar, Prince Astor seized the moment, proclaiming his strength to the nation and announcing his engagement to Sarah von Hartmann, naming her the cornerstone of his future reign. The crowd roared, hailing him like a national hero as Astor's announcement swept the plaza. Hermes watched coldly and declared that here everything is decided by the brute strength of hereditary magic. Astor's grip came from power, not justice, and no matter how they fought, the nobility would always obey that rigged system. A warped mirror of their society, Hermes, reeling from all he's seen, recalls his master's warning about nobles sated on inheritance and finally understands. The capital's glitter of prestige and power is a rotten mask, breeding laziness, arrogance, and fake merit, and he meets that truth with burning contempt.